Viseris hovered, zooming a bit to the side when the green, rotting monstrosity dove toward him. He hadn't seen these in the beetle village, though he had heard about them. From his memory, necromancers weren't supposed to be able to summon more than a few of them at a time. The slowly fading battalion was not what he would describe as a few. Groaning pyromancers strewn about the ground with suddenly tattered clothes, drooping skin, and, in a few cases, missing limbs, seemed just as surprised. How did she do that with gloves on? Don't mancers need their hands to do magic? While the pyromancers regrouped and tried to figure out what happened, the ant raged. "Where is he? Where is he?" A pyromancer tried to calm her down, but she drew her blades and slashed at him. He dodged the sudden attack, his burnt hands glowing with fire as he looked ready to respond. "Enough!" shouted a woman in some semblance of authority. "We will deal with the necromancer and her abduction in due time." Due time? He is a fertile male, and the queendoms will not sit around and wait for the chaos of other nations to sort itself out. We will get what is rightfully ours, or we will make the world suffer for it. The pyromancer that she had slashed at had his face growing increasingly scrunched. The flames on his hands were starting to resurface. "You ungrateful little... Stand down, Murkov! As for you, Ant, we will find the male ant for you. You just need to give us time. The necromancer will not have gotten far. Men, take the wounded to the biomancer quarter. The rest of you, search the streets. I want that necromancer and her ant found now." There was a resounding wave of "yes, ma'ams" before the pyromancers moved into action. Viseris was very glad he had the foresight to weave through the chaos and follow Nedra to that tunnel entrance. Mancers could be so clueless. "You could search the streets. Or you could, get a dragonfly besides me to fly up and get an aerial view of the city. Or maybe even a few flying beetles with decent vision, narrowing your search by quite a bit. Then again, I should be grateful. Smart authority figures would cut into my profits." Speaking of profits, he noticed the soldier ant still ranting, though less loudly, to the lobster that seemed to be trying and failing to console her. Returning to Killstop's side, he asked his longtime companion if they really wanted to do this. Killstop, after taking a few moments to silence his doubts, assured Viseris that he had no doubts to silence. The pair, trying to avoid the notice of any remaining pyromancers, a pretty simple task, considering, walked up to the ant. "The pyromancers won't find him. They're looking in the wrong place. My friend here is a dragonfly. They can see everything, and he knows where she took him." The ant held her blades to Viserys' head, which prompted him to move out of the way. "Threatening us is very rude. We're trying to help. Unfortunately, we're not murderous slavers, or, as your kind would put it, selfless. We want payment." Killstop cut in. "I know the queendoms won't pay their lessers, but I'm sure you can arrange something with your betters. The wasps have excellent jewelry, I hear. Also, we want your word that, to the best of whatever ability you have in your caste, the queendoms will not start a war over this." She clearly was not fond of the idea, but she was also a woman who recognized when the options were not in her favor. "I accept your terms." Viserys pointed. "There is an iron disc in the ground. Opening it accesses the tunnels that the hydromancers use to clean the city. Nedra, your necromancer, led through it." Her lobster friend was clearly not convinced. "The Lady of Fire! Those tunnels go through periodic floodings. It could be extremely dangerous for a creature that can't swim or fly. Mancers can't even crawl on the walls. She would be probable to kill herself if she went down there at the wrong time." "Would she know that? Besides, she's a necromancer. They enjoy death. I'm pretty sure they actually get stronger when they're closer to dying. Anyway, I, as a dragonfly, am more than willing to enter the tunnel for you. I can fly. The flooding won't bother me. But it will require an increase in my payment." "The Lady of Fire! Your dear selfist would be much better prepared to take on this task. My body is built for the water." The lady seemed indecisive, which also seemed to be a rarity for her. You both will go. Whomever brings back the male alive will be rewarded. I will also go, and if I get to him first there will be peace, depending on the Mancer's willingness to let us punish the necromancer." "What if the male is dead?" asked Kilstop. "Then there will be consequences." Selphist had no intention of letting that devoured six legs get mere gold out of the queendoms when he could get something that really mattered. With armies of ants and wasps, supplied by more of the same as well as an uncountable ensemble of bees, swarming over the land with their insurmountable numbers and unmatched cooperation, the crustacean isles would be free from the fungoids in no time. After countless petitions to every nation of Secta, and almost just as many to Mansa, the fact that his people might finally had hope had his mouth parts frothing. "My children, my grandchildren, they will grow in the homeland. They will know the old ways." His mind darkened a little. "They will not know the humiliation the other sectants toss upon us every day." Selphist held no qualms about living in the city of all nations. He had seen firsthand what living in another species' homeland meant, especially for one who had no homeland to call upon in times of need. Having 10 limbs in a time when the tarantula was turning the number of limbs one had into an even bigger problem than in the past did not help. Thus, his legs gripped awkwardly to the smooth tunnels, antennae searching for any term of deeper water so he could move at his true speed. That necromancer was his. Viseris was primarily thinking of the gold. Still, he felt guilty. Bringing a male ant back to the queendoms was not in his normal list of moral things to do. He did very little that was on that list, but this was off of there for a better reason than most. The dragonfly had visited the queendoms before, hiding from a particularly vengeful termite and looking for some much-needed food, and had been thoroughly impressed. Out of all the slave-holding nations, Viseris had never before seen one where an outsider couldn't tell the slaves from the citizens. Most dragonflies would say the male had a better life than the females. Limbs ripped off and death by rape withstanding, for he gotten a brief taste of freedom. While Viseris wasn't entirely on board with his people's fanatical obsession with liberty, he felt they had a point. "I should be able to navigate the tunnels better than the lobster, so long as the water level stays low. Better eyes, flight, navigability. The only advantage he has is in swimming, and whatever truth there is in the rumors about crustacean antennae in the water." He zipped to an opening in the side, turning his body after he was already a ways in. Kilstop hung upside down, his arms folded and eyes staring at the cove and the trickle of filthy water that streamed out. Viseris had asked him to wait in ambush. It never seemed to occur to the dragonfly that Kilstop had no way of knowing where Nedra would be to ambush her, but it did occur to Kilstop that Nedra would be looking for a way out of the city. Assuming she knew what she was doing, which was a pretty big assumption, she would head for one of the drains that led outside, putting her either in the ocean, directly in front of the poorest parts of the Mancer district, which would surely be guarded by pyromancers who had been alerted to search for necromancer in gloves with an ant, or here, on the cliffs overlooking the valley that Heoth the Uniter had declared would be the first site of peace for all Mancers and Sectans. If Nedra got out of there, it would be the first sight before she started a war. The Mantid couldn't help but appreciate the irony. There was a part of him that wondered whether he wasn't too late, for he had wasted a bit of time convincing the female ant to guard the other possible escape. But then he remembered just how large the city was. It was not possible that Nedra could navigate those tunnels with ease. It had taken a lot of energy for Nedra to summon that swarm of spirits to distract the guards. It was taking more than expected to maintain the image of a beetle who died in these tunnels so he could guide them. "Just as someone who can lead us or advise us on the rest of the way. Then I will ease up." She briefly wished she had fought for longer so she could come closer to death, Nedra didn't enjoy strengthening her powers through the normal means, as it always reminded her of her impromptu testing when Krios tossed her naked into the snow right in the middle of one of Cryo's harsh blizzards. Still, she of all people knew when it was necessary. Ah, the gift of the ever-dying god. It just keeps on giving. She wandered through the tunnels, going through twists and turns that she would have sworn were random, occasionally passing by symbols of the walls that seemed to be the only distinguishing factor between any section of these tormented tunnels. It was becoming increasingly clear why Krios hadn't included them in her escape plan. So long as no one knows I'm here. Nedra had too much of an understanding of her luck to assume that no one had thought to look in the tunnels. What about that seemingly random dragonfly from earlier? He seemed to be trouble. The type of trouble that could get her killed. What was that? She could have sworn there was a skittering noise. Probably a worker. Rotting hands raised. She had taken her gloves off as soon as she was out of sight. Nedra continued forth. Right into a spiny lobster.